The New Hampshire primary exactly 1 week away, and the presidential candidates are out in force, with the Iowa caucuses shaking up the GOP field. A big victory for Ted Cruz over Donald Trump, and a strong third-place finish for Marco Rubio. Dan Balls, writing in the Washington Post, quote, "The results scrambled the Republican race as it heads to New Hampshire, giving the GOP a genuine three-way contest that will put Trump to tests he hasn't been faced with, and pitting Cruz and Rubio against one another in a contest both have long been anticipating." Joining us now, A.B. Stoddard, editor and columnist at The Hill. What strikes you most over last night's Republican results, A.B.?
Really, that winning doesn't necessarily make you so happy. I think Cruz is definitely thrilled that he ended up prevailing over Donald Trump. His internal polling had shown that he would, despite the Des Moines Register poll that came out Saturday night with him 5 points behind Donald Trump. But look who's happy today. Marco Rubio is happy today. He came in third. Donald Trump is not happy. Look who's happy on the Democratic side. Bernie Sanders is. Clinton might be declared the winner. I don't know if Fox News has called for that race. I know people are possibly still counting at least in one precinct, but Bernie's happy, and Clinton is potentially having a staff shakeup. So it really does reset the race. Dan Balls is right. Instead of having a fight between Rubio and Kasich and Jeb and people who have been doing well in New Hampshire and for waiting for this moment, he actually could suck up a lot of new donors and a lot of momentum this week and really take them out of the play. Donald Trump, as you mentioned, really has a lot to do in the next week. Does he decide to suddenly have a traditional ground game just in a matter of days? Does he attack down to Rubio? Does he attack to Cruz? Does he attack Jeb and Kasich, who have been doing well and have been surging a bit in New Hampshire? What kind of a message is he going to come up with? I think the independent, so-called undeclared vote in New Hampshire is great news for Trump and Bernie Sanders. But it really just depends, particularly on the Republican side, what kind of campaign we see out of Trump this week and what kind of attacks and responses come from Cruz, Rubio, Jeb and Kasich.
So far, Donald Trump seems to be playing nice. As we were coming on the air, Bill Hemmer mentioned Donald Trump hadn't tweeted in something like 18 hours. He's famous for sending out tweets at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. Well, he just did at 11:03 this morning. Here's what he said. "My experience in Iowa was a great one. I started out with all of the experts saying I couldn't do well there and ended up in second place. Nice." What do you think about that spin? Or is it spin, A.B.?
Oh, it's spin. I mean, when Ben Carson was ahead of him in Iowa in November, he asked Iowans how they could be so stupid and what was wrong with them. He's dominated the polls for 7 months, but in the few moments he thought that he was facing the fear of losing against Carson, national polls in Iowa in November, against Cruz in late December, early January in Iowa, he got very aggressive. So I think this new positive and humble and grateful tone, resetting expectations, is probably a smart thing for Donald Trump to do.
Well, he also came in 4 points below, more than 4 points below, the Real Clear Politics average of the polls going in. He underperformed, according to the polls. Ted Cruz was up almost 4% over the polls. And the real winner, it seems like, is Marco Rubio, who came in 6 points ahead of where the Real Clear Politics average of the polling put it.
Right, and 8 points ahead of the Des Moines Register poll that's supposed to be the gold standard, and everyone was considered was a lockdown Saturday night. Rubio is absolutely the story here. He has the same amount of delegates as Donald Trump. Cruz has 8. They each have 7. He basically nipped right behind him and almost eclipsed him. That's going to be a question this week. Does Donald Trump go after Senator Rubio? Who does he attack? Who does he try to bring down to keep a commanding lead in New Hampshire? That's going to be the interesting question. But for Rubio, this is a moment for him to consolidate support among the establishment and say, I mean, his campaign was saying last night, if you don't want Cruz and you don't want Trump, it's time to get on board, which means no more support for Christie, Kasich, or Jeb. These are going to be interesting days and weeks to come as the establishment really hopes they can find a port in the storm. And if it looks like Rubio, he's going to get a larger share of the market share in weeks to come and contests to come. That's a threat to Trump and Cruz.
Martin O'Malley out of the race on the Democratic side. Governor Huckabee out of the race on the Republican side. Where do their supporters go?
I think Governor Huckabee's supporters could end up with Senator Cruz, but you know Senator Rubio attracted a lot of evangelical support in Iowa. I don't know if they're sort of just, you know, some of them are maybe angry, kind of Trump types, we really won't know, but it's 2%. It's not really enough to make a difference. The people that Cruz really needs to attract are Dr. Carson's support, because he was at 9 or 10% in Iowa, and without him, if he had dropped out before, Cruz would have had a much bigger victory. So he'll be looking, if Carson's campaign continues to be in a fragile state and deteriorates in the weeks to come, he'll be looking for his supporters.
The associate editor of The Hill, A.B. Stoddard. A.B., thanks for sharing your insights.
Thanks, John.